The woman who spent 6 years telling everyone that I was broken chose the worst possible moment to humiliate me. She stood in the middle of the hospital hallway, surrounded by nurses and staff, smiling as she announced that her son had finally found happiness with another woman and now had the baby I could never give him. What she did not know was that within a few weeks, a secret hidden for years would destroy every lie she had spent so long spreading. My name is Madison Reed. I am 36 years old, and I work as an emergency room physician. I have spent years handling life and death situations. I have treated victims of terrible accidents and comforted grieving families through unimaginable pain. People often tell me I stay calm under pressure, and they are right. Until recently, I believed there was no situation capable of shaking me. Then my former mother-in-law reminded me how cruel people can be when they believe a lie long enough. That afternoon I was leaving a shift when I saw Linda Brooks near the maternity ward. The moment she noticed me, she walked directly toward me with the confidence of someone who believed she had won. Several nurses were standing nearby, and she made sure they could hear every word. She loudly announced that divorcing me had been the smartest decision her son ever made and proudly declared that he now had a beautiful baby boy with my former best friend. The hallway grew silent as people stopped to listen. She expected tears, anger, or humiliation. Instead, I simply looked at her and asked if she truly believed what she had just said. The question caught her off guard, but before she could answer, someone walked through the hospital entrance. At the time I had no idea who he was, yet his arrival would eventually expose the truth that changed everything. To understand why that moment mattered, you need to know how the nightmare began. I grew up in a small Ohio town where everyone knew each other and gossip traveled faster than facts. My parents worked incredibly hard, just to keep food on the table. Nothing was handed to me, and every achievement required sacrifice. While my friends enjoyed weekends and vacations, I spent countless nights studying because I wanted a better future. Eventually, all that work paid off, and I became a doctor. Throughout those years, I lived by a simple belief. Work hard, tell the truth, and eventually, everything will work out. That belief helped me succeed professionally, but it nearly destroyed me personally. I married Jason Brooks when I was 28 years old. At first, he seemed perfect. He was charming, confident, and well-liked by everyone who met him. He knew exactly how to make people trust him, and for several years, I believed I had married the right man. We talked constantly about building a family together. Unfortunately, despite years of trying, we never had children. Month after month passed, then years. The disappointment slowly became impossible to ignore. Eventually, I suggested that we both undergo fertility testing. It was a routine process, and as a doctor, I saw no reason to avoid it. Jason reacted immediately. First he laughed, then he became defensive. Finally, he became angry. He insisted there was no need for him to be tested and claimed there was no chance the problem could be on his side. Unable to force the issue, I scheduled my own appointment. When the results came back, every test was completely normal. Instead of feeling relieved, I felt confused. If nothing was wrong with me, why was Jason so unwilling to be evaluated? I never received an answer because while I was searching for one, he was quietly creating a different story. Without my knowledge, he had begun telling his mother that I was the reason we could not have children. Linda believed every word. To her, her son could do no wrong. Soon, she started sharing the story with friends, relatives, church members, and eventually the entire community. At first, it was subtle comments and sympathetic looks. Then it became open gossip. Everywhere I went, people treated me like a woman who had failed at the one thing society expected from her. The most painful part was that I never defended myself. I believed the truth would eventually reveal itself. Looking back, that was the biggest mistake of my life. During those difficult years, my closest friend was Ashley Carter. We had known each other since high school. She stood beside me at my wedding, comforted me after family tragedies, and listened whenever I needed support. Whenever gossip became overwhelming, she would sit in my living room and reassure me that everything would be okay. She constantly told me not to listen to Linda or worry about what people thought. At the time, I believed she cared about me. I failed to notice the way she watched my husband when she thought I was not looking. I ignored the little warning signs because I trusted her completely. Everything collapsed one ordinary evening. After a long hospital shift, I returned home and found divorce papers sitting on the kitchen counter. At first I thought there had been some mistake. Then I walked upstairs and discovered half of Jason's belongings were gone. He had moved out without even speaking to me. Within days the entire town knew what happened. Within weeks he was openly living with Ashley. My husband had left me for my best friend, and almost nobody questioned it. Instead, people repeated the same cruel narrative they had heard for years. They claimed I cared more about my career than my marriage. They said I was cold, distant, and incapable of giving him the family he deserved. Linda repeated those accusations everywhere she went, and Ashley never corrected a single one of them. The betrayal nearly broke me. Every morning I went to work, helped patients, and pretended everything was fine. Every night I returned home and cried where nobody could see me. Eventually I convinced myself that focusing on my career was the only way forward. The hospital became my refuge because inside those walls people judged me based on my skills instead of rumors. For a while that strategy worked, then the lies followed me there too. For years I had worked toward becoming director of emergency medicine. I trained staff, improved procedures, and earned the respect of nearly everyone in the department. Most people expected me to receive the promotion. Then suddenly strange questions began appearing. Members of the board started discussing my emotional stability and personal life. Someone connected to Jason's family quietly planted doubts about my character. When the final decision was announced, another candidate received the position despite having far less experience. Sitting in that conference room, I finally realized my silence was costing me everything. A trusted nurse recommended an attorney named Claire Dawson. During our first meeting, I told her the entire story. She listened carefully before explaining that what had happened might qualify as defamation. She explained that if false statements caused measurable damage to my reputation and career, there could be legal consequences. The challenge would be proving the accusations were false. Before I left, she told me something that stayed with me for weeks. She said silence is not always strength. Sometimes silence only protects the people who are hurting you. After thinking about her words for days, I decided I was done carrying someone else's lie. I hired Claire and authorized her to begin investigating. The lawsuit immediately created controversy throughout town. Some people supported me, while others claimed I was seeking revenge. Linda responded exactly as my attorney predicted. Instead of backing down, she repeated the accusations even more aggressively. Every new statement became additional evidence. Then something unexpected happened. Jason's legal team officially claimed the accusations were true. That decision opened a door they never should have touched. Because they insisted I was responsible for our inability to have children, the court allowed access to relevant medical information. Suddenly the subject Jason had avoided for years could no longer remain hidden. His attorneys fought desperately to block the records, which only increased my suspicion. Months later, after endless legal battles, the judge ruled that the records had to be released. For the first time, fear appeared on the other side. About a week later, I received a message from Ashley. It was the first time she had contacted me in over a year. Her message was short. She begged me to stop the lawsuit and think about the baby. Reading those words immediately raised a question. Why was she so afraid? The case was about false accusations against me. Yet she sounded terrified. I ignored the message and waited. Several days later, Claire called and asked me to come to her office immediately. When I arrived, she handed me a heavily protected court document. Only a single section remained visible. One sentence changed everything. 7 years earlier, Jason had been diagnosed with a medical condition that made biological fatherhood impossible. I stared at the paper in complete silence. For years I had carried shame that never belonged to me. For years I allowed people to blame me for something that was never my fault. All along Jason knew the truth and chose to sacrifice my reputation to protect his own. Then another realization struck me. If Jason could not father children, then the baby he proudly claimed as his son could not biologically belong to him. Suddenly Ashley's desperate message made perfect sense. She was not afraid for Jason, she was afraid of the truth. The rest of the story unfolded quickly. The man who entered the hospital hallway that day turned out to be Ryan Mitchell, a man Ashley had secretly been involved with before becoming pregnant. After years of unanswered questions, he began investigating the timeline and eventually sought legal confirmation. DNA testing proved what many had begun to suspect. Ryan was the biological father of the child, not Jason. My sister spent years stealing things she thought would make her happy. She stole my relationship, my future plans, and my trust. What she never understood was that she could never steal my ability to start over. Years earlier, I left town with a suitcase and a broken heart. I returned with success, confidence, and a life I built entirely on my own. As I looked in the mirror during the drive home, I realized something that made me smile. For my entire childhood, I had lived in Savannah's shadow. But on that day, standing at that reunion, the truth finally became impossible to ignore. She was the one standing in mine.